to it. Blap.
What does that do?
Well, we learned you can sync up the audio and the video with the noise.
Oh, neat.
I know. It was a revelation for all of us. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's very few things that are as selfless as coming into law enforcement, into the corrections, coming to a sheriff's office in this day and age.
From the heart of the country in Douglas County, Kansas, this is View from 100, a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement, community, and the stories that shape our county.
It's an honor and a privilege to serve not just the community, but my community. I mean, I was born and raised here.
Hosted by your sheriff, Jay Armbrister, bringing you insights from the badge and beyond.
Okay, well, welcome back. This is our number 2 podcast for the View from 100. I'm your sheriff, Jay Armbrister, and I have a special guest with me here today, Katy Fitzgerald, who is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council coordinator. But this podcast is designed to hopefully bring in some shareholders and some stakeholders and people who work within the system, but also to reach out and maybe eventually get to some folks in the community who provide resources and do all of the unsung work behind the scenes that we rely so heavily on. So, but today we're blessed to have Miss Katy here with us to talk about what it is that she does, who she is, and why on earth she is here. So, thank you, Katy, for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. Hey, we're going to start with the easy stuff. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you do?
So the first 2 of those are easy.
Mm-hmm.
You're then the third. So my name's Katy Fitzgerald. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. So I'm not from around these parts.
The DFW?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I went to Texas Tech in West Texas.
Lubbock, yeah. The Red Raiders.
Yes, I loved Lubbock. And I went to college there and then went to Charlotte. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina for graduate school. So I have my master's in clinical and community psychology. Mm-hmm. So I'm clinician by training and spent the first part of my adult career actually providing direct clinical services for adults and juveniles who were involved kind of across the criminal justice system.
Really?
So,
I had no idea.
I have always worked with clients who had criminal justice involvement. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of started in the community mental health center, working with juveniles primarily who were a couple steps away from being committed to a training school, and adults who were kind of pre-incarceration, post-release.
Pre-justice involved.
And then I spent some time working actually in a juvenile justice training school, which I just really, I loved working there with that population.
It takes a special person. Was that in Charlotte as well?
It was just north of Charlotte. It was at the Stonewall Jackson Youth Development Center.
Okay, I've heard of Stonewall.
The oldest facility in North Carolina's juvenile justice.
I believe he was on the losing end of the Civil War, if I remember right.
I mean, he was, but
it
was just named for him. But it was an all-male facility for a lot of like really heavily involved juveniles on the very serious end of the spectrum. I've worked in the managed care side of clinical services, kind of serving as a liaison between the courts and treatment providers and mostly juvenile clients. So juvenile justice is kind of my passion in my former life. But so I kind of, that is a lot of my background before I kind of came into a space of working with programming, a lot of data, policy. And before I came to Douglas County, I was working for Mecklenburg County, North Carolina.
Which is what city?
Charlotte.
So it's a very big
county. It's, I think, exactly 10 times larger population-wise
so
than
they're right
Douglas
at a
County.
million, probably.
Yes.
A little over. Okay.
And I had actually started with Mecklenburg County well before it got to 1 million people. So like being able to kind of watch that population growth and the service adjustment,
Sure.
the way that we all had to go, oh my gosh, what's happening
Yeah.
here, was really interesting. But I spent the last several years before I moved here doing a lot of work, primarily in pretrial reform, bail reform, on the adult side. So I have a very odd background, maybe.
Okay.
A very
Your word, not mine.
It's just a different background,
Sure.
I think, that a lot of people don't necessarily have or expect, maybe.
Sure.
So that was me before I came to Douglas
Yeah.
County.
Up until what year?
The end of July 2022.
Okay.
I moved out here.
Sure.
And I was kind of just looking for a different work. I was just looking for a change.
Douglas County is different
and
in every way, shape, and
I
form.
couldn't find it on a map.
You're welcome. Yeah. We prefer that.
And I was just looking for a change.
Yeah.
And had an opportunity. This was an opportunity for me to move closer to home.
Sure.
And closer to family. And had I not gone to UNC Charlotte for graduate school, I would have gone to Fort Hays State.
Oh.
I was down to those two. So Kansas was like
Sure.
this is not the first time Kansas has kind of
Yeah.
crossed my path.
Okay.
So,
Fort Hays State's beautiful.
so-
I mean, it's a long ways out there, but man, great town, great university.
so that's how I came here.
Sure. Okay. And I remember I sat in on an interview panel when you were, and I recall it being pretty hands down who we wanted.
Oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I didn't say that. I just said it was hands down. I didn't say it was you.
Well, okay, well, you got me. So
Absolutely.
not
it
sure
was
how
you.
that worked out well.
There was
for
no
y'all.
there was no choice about it. We wanted you to come here. So so where do you fit within the Douglas County governmental structure?
So I report directly to the county administrator. I do not have staff. But I'm part of Sarah's that kind of executive team.
Okay.
With Bob Transky. So he and I are similarly situated,
Sure.
just different lanes.
Yeah.
Him over behavioral health and then me over criminal justice. And then we're on that team with Jill Jolliker, who's the assistant county administrator, and then Sean Peterson
Okay.
and Carrie Britt.
Okay. So you're a county employee, but you
Yes.
work under the direct supervision of the county administrator.
Yes.
But you're kind of a little weird finger sticking off the side of the bubble. Okay, perfect. And who do you intersect most with? And so I guess I would say that your position is odd or rare in the fact that you tie in with all three co-equal branches of government, legislative, judicial, and executive.
I had that in my notes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We did a
I'm
Civics
reading
101
ahead.
class.
I'm reading ahead.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who remembers that.
I've had to learn that. So yeah, funny thing, during the election, I learned that the district attorney, I always assumed the district attorney was in the judicial branch. No, they're executive branch. So yeah, it's old dogs, new tricks. So where do you intersect the most as far as your day-to-day grind?
So it's not an unusual question for me to get about, well, what do you do? Right? Like what does this position, the criminal justice coordinator, what does that do? It is a unique position that I think a lot of local governments do not have. And I think a lot of the responsibilities kind of end up getting tacked on to department directors or sheriffs. They get really split up between a lot of the leaders of the partner agencies that my position works with.
Sure.
And that may work fine. But what I get to do is I get to kind of on behalf of the county or for the county serve as, I view my role as kind of the center of all the spokes in the wheel. And so all of the partner agencies of the criminal justice system, so your peers in the police departments, the courts, district and municipal, the district attorney, the defense attorneys, criminal justice services department. So our pretrial services, alternatives to correction, to incarceration programs, probation, treatment providers who are working with our court involved folks. So kind of if you all are all the spokes, then I'm able to I'm kind of where y'all come together.
Yep.
I really am a neutral party. So while I work on behalf of the county and work for the county, certainly the county's interests that's always my first. I have to make sure I'm looking out for those first.
Yep.
But there's a lot of room for me to kind of move within that space.
Sure.
I think I have a lot of latitude to step in and kind of help you all think about how to address challenges that maybe within a specific discipline come up, or across the system, and kind of think about how do we best leverage resources that you might have and put together, like kind of cobble together resources across the system. And I think a lot of that is born from when we think about those three branches of government and the criminal justice system. All of those are often very siloed and separated by design. Right.
Yep.
And so you all, there's very specific, certainly responsibilities,
Lanes
right?
of travel,
and that don't often intersect, but they have to kind of flow together.
Yeah.
And so I kind of view myself as I think I'm best positioned to just kind of float in between there, where I am needed.
Yeah, no,
maybe.
Absolutely.
And hopefully I'm helpful for people.
Of
That's always the thing that I'm like, this is what I say I do.
Yeah.
But whether
You're not creating more work.
hopefully not.
So, what has been what year did you say you started? 20?
It feels like a lot longer.
Was it 21 or 22?
22.
Oh my gosh.
It was the summer of 22, but it feels like a lot longer.
We were just babies back then.
Really?
No, that's not true at all. Absolutely not. I was old codger already by then. But so in the 3 years or whatever, what's been kind of the biggest? What's been a good success? What's been the biggest struggle? Well, we're paying you, and you can't tell me one damn thing that you've done that's good.
Well, if I have to pick one, I can rattle off a whole bunch of things I think you all have done really well. I think our competency restoration program is one thing I would always that was such an honor for me to be able to help you all.
Me too,
kind of lead that.
And for those of you that may not understand that, competency restoration is where a person has been found incompetent to stand trial, and they have to go to the state hospital to restore competency and for an evaluation. And that process has been taking anywhere from 12 to 14 months, where these people just sit and languish in jail. But as a county, with Bert Nash, the courts, the DA, jail, us, we've all come together to try to see if we can get that system to happen in our jail instead of having to wait for a bed to open up. Hopefully keeping these people from decompensating and just languishing for that 12 to 14 months. So sorry.
Yeah.
And we are all deeply proud of it. And so, yes.
I think I would always say that. Some other things, so probation was really struggling getting a lot of their clients assessed.
Sure.
When there had been a court order, just regular mental health evaluation. And we were able to, I will never say I did these things. This is a challenge too, right? Because I myself did not do a lot of these
But you
things.
facilitated,
I just
made
kind
it
of
happen.
helped
Yes.
create the space for
Okay,
them.
so you made it happen. Got it.
But we were able to work with Bert Nash, and we have kind of a dedicated assessor that has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that was a huge win for probation and for the courts. And then I think just within the CJCC, I think that we've done a lot of work since 2023.
Sure.
Between we had the assessment completed of how are we functioning against best practice standards.
Sure.
And then you were part of our bylaws work group when we just really revamped that, right? And just totally changed how we govern how we will be governed, how we will hold ourselves accountable. And then the strategic planning process kind of was almost the death of me.
But it was a necessary evil.
So I think those I would say are big.
Sure.
Those are the things that when I look back, I say, well, that was really. Yeah. I think those are big things.
I would say, like from a law enforcement perspective, the murder of George Floyd created a vacuum and a space for us to get better. and hold ourselves more accountable. I kind of felt like, now I came into office right at the tail end of the pandemic, and we were kind of coming out of it. And I felt like the pandemic offered the CJCC, for those of you, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, the opportunity to really kind of rethink what it is we were doing, because it was built with the best of intentions, and it operated for, I don't know, several years pre-pandemic, probably
4 or 5.
4. Okay. But it had kind of lost its way, so to speak, and it was an opportunity for us to all as partners to kind of bring it back in and be like, hey, what is our goal here? How do we get to that? And so you were able to negotiate a lot of that streamlining and moving, but also you had to take in the input from everybody and decide, kind of pare it down and decide what's what. And so I think you're selling yourself a bit short in that you didn't do it because you did. But I don't think anybody knows how difficult it is to wrangle a judge, a DA, a sheriff, and community members, all at the same time, who have not differing values, but we have competing values at times. Yeah. So I think it's easier to say, oh yeah, all these people came together and did this great job, but you really convened, you created the environment for that to happen. So
y'all are hard to track down sometimes. But I've learned
by design.
So I think sometimes the challenge, and then the biggest challenge, and the thing that I enjoy the most is sometimes the same thing.
Sure.
Being able to, that is always the design of the criminal justice system,
sure,
where it's sometimes adversarial,
yeah,
but mostly competing.
Right.
Values and just the structure is challenging to navigate.
Sure.
Especially, I think especially coming into a space here where, I was in Charlotte for so long. Mm-hmm. It's hard to kind of recreate. I was not sure what I was up against.
Sure.
Right. And I'm an outsider. Yeah. And like, how do
you know now what you're up against?
Most of the time.
Okay.
But y'all still surprise me.
That's right. That's what keep you on your toes.
But as an outsider, sometimes this is hard. This is a hard space
for sure.
Not mm-hmm. one of your own, to kind
Absolutely.
of come into. It's a hard space anyways.
Yeah.
But then to come in, it's not like, well, I'm from somewhere else in Kansas.
Yeah, right.
I'm a completely unknown commodity coming in.
Mm-hmm. Alien.
In
the most respectful way.
We could go down a whole rabbit hole about that. But it's been challenging. I think for the most part, I was lucky. I think you all are I walked into a really good group of executives that at the part, thinking about who all's at that table.
Sure. Totally agree. Well, everybody was there for the right reasons.
And y'all all work really well together for particularly disciplines. You all as law enforcement work really well together. Usually, that chiefs group, the courts work really well together. Like the partners were all there, and it was a really good group of folks that. So I wasn't needing to get buy-in for coming to the table.
Right.
One of the challenges that I think, particularly with the strategic planning process, and I'm thinking about as we're starting the steps of implementation of that.
Sure.
A potential challenge that I think may just always be a thing is getting the buy-in to go deeper. Mm-hmm. So it's not just come to the table and kind of surface level. You guys did all the surface level work before I got here.
Right.
And I use the metaphor a lot of we're digging into the fat.
Right.
Or we're digging into the muscle now. Right. That this is where things really get hard.
Yeah. And people will feel like they're under the microscope, or that we're looking in their closets. And I can see how that would be frustrating. But again, if you pull the frame out and you realize that you're looking at an entire system, we all want it to be better. And we want it to work correctly. That may never happen. That may be, but we can certainly always be better.
Yeah.
So I think I could see how that would be very difficult. But and again, the courts have always kind of operated in their own silo, and we are very fortunate. And I hope you would agree with me that we have the courts buy-in and their participation. Yeah. There's a lot of places that that the chiefs and the sheriff don't get along, and that the courts and everybody else don't get along. Yep. And we're very fortunate in this community to have really good relationships with all those. So,
yeah, and I think engaging the buy-in or building buy-in to take the next step, which
Sure.
you all each, I have no agency or authority
Right.
over you or over any partner at the table, right? I don't get to say, okay, chiefs, like when we have our chiefs meeting, I don't get to walk in there and say,
Yep.
here's what y'all are all going to do because this is what the county wants.
Right.
I mean, I guess I could do that, and I don't get the response that I'm looking for, right?
Right.
But the trying to be sensitive, how I hope you would agree, and that the other partners would view how I try to approach that is recognizing, that you all have trying to really learn what are the concerns for you and for your discipline, and certainly there are lots of folks sitting at the CJCC table in particular who have at different times felt very much under the microscope and haven't, and that has not been such a great feeling for them, and don't want to replicate that.
Right.
And so I try. It's really important to me. Relationships are really important because I'm not successful at my job without them.
Right.
And which means I can't help you be even more successful without that. Like,
oh yeah, our success is shared for sure.
So I try to approach those with making sure, be in a space of learning. What is the concern for you? What is the barrier for you? How can I work with that?
Right.
And there are times where the answer is we're just not going to work past this. Okay, so we're just going to move on to the next thing.
Right.
And I try not to force things. I mean, I hope you all experience that.
Course.
That's how I try to work through that.
Sure.
And work in knowing that, one of the hardest things, not just for folks who have to intersect or be involved with the justice system, we always hear a lot about trust, right? Does the public trust the system?
Yeah.
And the same can be true, I think, for the partners in the system.
100%.
You all have to be in a place at some point where, y'all trust each other across the system. And so can I help build that? Like, I'm always kind of looking for and watching for how can I help and where those are the barriers.
And I think it also exposes a place that your work gets harder is when two partners are not in the same lane or on the same page, and or maybe even working against each other, which may or may not have happened in the last 4 years. But it's very difficult when there's friction between the two, and you're the one that eventually has to kind of step in and be like, we're all trying to get to the same place. And so I think that kind of goes under the radar quite a bit that you end up having to do that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I said this in my interview, but I remember one of the, so I had to do a slideshow, the interview that you had sat in on. I had to do a PowerPoint of, I can't even remember now what the topic is, but one of the things that I initially had talked about was how I view the role of this. So this is a similar role to what I played when I was in Mecklenburg County. And one of the things I think is necessary, and I think I am the therapist for a lot of partners.
You've got the training.
That, you just, like, there are times you just have to I need to be a safe space for y'all to be able to say, here's what's happening.
Sure.
And so that is very important to me to be that for you all. That,
absolutely.
Because I need to understand what their dynamics and things that are happening that I'm not going to know about. And I don't need to know all of it.
Right.
But if I'm watching, because I think a lot of my clinical training and my background doing that and working with people, I pick up on things and I'm like, what is happening?
Right.
With that?
Yeah.
Or why? What's going on?
Yeah.
And so I think I had at one point wanted to say I view that part of my role is not just understanding policy and understanding data and how do we implement things, but it was being a therapist and a referee. And those are sometimes really important, stay in two corners. And I think sometimes that's a really important role. To me, those are very important.
Right. I think.
Because I don't know that people always know how necessary they are sometimes unless you've been in that space.
And I think it's safe to say that was probably not on the application. How good are you at keeping two executive level administrators happy when they're not. So I think that's, well, I hope you don't ever leave because I don't know we'll get another one. So really, the CJCC is obviously pretty unique for not just Douglas County, but for a lot of counties around us. I mean, there's not that many. And I think we are uniquely situated too with a community that wants to fund resourcing, but also we have certain resources within our community, Burt Nash, that other places don't have. And so how has it been as far as like just the community being able to step in and fill some roles that we need in this space? And by community, I mean the Burt Nashes and the Heartlands and the AHH and all the different the community resources that we have.
So I have actually, that was one of the things that was really a very pleasant surprise to walk into, going from a county of 1.2 million people to a county of 120,000, and geographically a very different setup, right? Like, Douglas County is so rural, outside of Lawrence,
right,
and Mecklenburg County not so much,
all urban.
and but similar to, and Mecklenburg County was at the time that I had left, and probably still is, was kind of the richest county in the state of North Carolina, and the blue dot in the Red Sea. I mean,
what that happens?
Is that unfamiliar? Like there were some things that were similar.
The blue oasis.
But we were resource rich in some ways, but not resource accessible. Like the accessibility of the resources here that you all, as when I think about the executives that I work with, that you can just access AHH, right? Like you can just call Artists Helping the Homeless, and they respond, and because
they're amazing,
and they're all of those resources, how accessible they are. That has been that was really different for me,
and
which doesn't maybe make sense.
No, I think it absolutely does. I've always been born and raised in Lawrence. I know that Lawrence's biggest weakness is Lawrence. There are times that we can't get out of our own way. But I've also said that I feel, and it's a good thing, but I feel like this community loses sight of how good we have it sometimes. And this is another example of like people in other communities are like, we have to stand up some group that will come and take our folks who are leaving jail and give them a place to stay and a way to work and do these things. Whereas I walked in and already had Artists Helping the Homeless, AHH. Or we need some place that we can take somebody having a mental health crisis that doesn't belong in jail, but can't be at home. We need to find something like that. Oh, this community funded a treatment and recovery center.
Right.
I feel like at times we lose sight of how good this community has been. But also we've also grown pretty big, in that space. And now we're having to navigate, how do we help other communities figure out what we've been doing, while also trying to make sure that we're helping our community first, as opposed to, folks who are coming here looking for help, but trying to help everybody together.
Yeah, it's definite. For a long time, Mecklenburg County, we had talked about and wanted a 24-hour crisis center. And the North Carolina, until a year or so ago, was also not a Medicaid expansion state. So we had similar.
Aren't we the last?
Possibly.
Yeah, we're close.
So Medicaid was so that also, it's not like we had Medicaid and Kansas did, Douglas County did. In that regard. But the structure, the way that behavioral health services are accessed through the managed care structure in North Carolina really just made that challenging. We did have some different kinds of housing options set up, but it just, the vast, so I don't want to say that Charlotte and Mecklenburg County didn't have all those resources, but it's just not, I mean, they're at our fingertips here, which just, and I don't think that it's just because we're smaller. Like I don't think that that's it. Having worked with a lot of I mean, it's the the real genuine interest and willingness, again, not just of frontline staff, but all the way up through through the executive leadership of these agencies is
there's buy-in.
Is just that was a pleasant adjustment to make.
And again, I think one of my favorite things about Lawrence that in Douglas County that people that lose sight of it is that we are willing to do the extra in assistance to our fellow human. Like we've had over the last couple of years, a lot of talk about homelessness and chronic homelessness and how did we get to this place? And a lot of people like to draw a line right back to, I don't remember what it was, 2020, the winter, but the city opened up a hotel. They bought out a hotel and then housed people in there. And of course the hotel got destroyed and people were very upset because the city then had to go back in. But while it's frustrating and it's hard to kind of make that okay, I was still proud of the city because they put their money where their mouth is and they helped the least fortunate among us. And I would rather learn the hard rules by helping them too much than not helping enough. And I think I feel like that's where Douglas County is that we will fail trying too hard to help somebody. So if you could, so let's say this little podcast that's going to have about 9 listens to it over the next year. If this got beamed into every home in our community and everybody had to listen to it, what's the one thing that you would want them to know about you and what you do, or just about the system itself?
Okay, so I have a couple things.
Okay. Roman numeral
I've
1.
I've never been one for following instructions. Sheriff, you should probably not be surprised by that.
Perfect.
So I think the overarching, I think they're all related though. Mm-hmm. So I don't I think there's just different components of this. And this might get me run out of town. But this is what just what I would say to that. So I think the overarching thing that I would want people to know is the criminal justice system, and not just the Douglas County criminal justice system, but the criminal justice system here and everywhere. Mm-hmm. It is not as straightforward.
No.
As
not a straight
what
line.
It feels like,
right.
Or as what it may seem like it should be.
Sure.
And underneath that, a couple of the things that I think are just important components of that for me. Mm-hmm. I think no one agency, we've talked about this already, no one agency, no one individual has authority or agency over another, right? So I don't get to tell you what you're going to do. Yep. You don't get to tell Baldwin City Police what they're going to do. The judge may get to tell some of us, but only in certain contexts, right?
Sure.
And so change in this space, and you all have experienced this and been part of this.
Yeah.
Change in this space is a result of relationships that are built across our partner agencies, in my view, that are based on mutual respect, trust, and understanding.
Sure.
And that change takes time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's not some overruling authority that says, y'all are going to go do this now.
Right.
I think the second thing that is missed, and I think it's easy in this community. I can see how in this community it's easy to get lost, but the criminal justice space is not quite as entrepreneurial as like our other human services spaces are. We don't have as much room to kind of take a new idea and run with it, because the third Roman numeral number 3. The boundaries of the justice system are not necessarily set by local rules, local resources, local institutions, right? You may want to do something.
Yeah.
And state law is going to say, nope, you don't get to do it that way, Douglas County Sheriff.
I've got an example, failures to appear. I was trying to get it to where if somebody missed a court date and got a warrant for their arrest, we would have one day a month where that person could freely appear and get a new court date. And I would talk to the judge, and the judge is like, that's a great idea, but it can't happen. I'm like, what? Why? He said, well, once a person has been arraigned on a charge, they've been given an attorney. I cannot, as a judge, I cannot speak to them. I cannot have them here. I can't have them in front of me for anything without their attorney. And you would have to coordinate it that they would have their attorney with them. And that's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, because those attorneys have their own schedules. Right. And so it was with the best of intentions, and everybody was on board like, yeah, we need to fix this. We simply couldn't do it in that way. Yeah. Now we're looking at other things, but that's a perfect example of just how the system itself prevented us from doing better.
And so all of we are, and I think it's a little different than when you think about like our housing system, right? Or some of the work that we've been able to do, that this community has been able to do. Sure. Through like establishing the TRC, right? Yeah. That was really, you can take an idea and you don't have as many barriers, or the pasture fences aren't quite as tight as I think they are set for those of us in the justice system. Yeah. And so all of that to say, I think it's frustrating, right? For folks, like when it feels like what they see is, well, you just didn't fix that.
Right.
It's really simple. Why didn't you just fix that?
Right.
It's not that simple.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. And just because you're not seeing that, I would not want people to do, especially in this community and with you all as my partners, I wouldn't want people to take that as, well, you just don't care.
Right.
Or that we're just happy to accept whole cloth, the system as it exists. Yeah. Because that's not necessarily true. That doesn't mean that we're not working on, if we can't do it this way, well, what happens if we go around this other side door?
That's
right. People just may not always see that.
Yeah.
And so then I think to the kind of perpetual question, I would say, well, I just hope people can trust us, which is the $1 million question.
That's what I'm hearing is that what you're asking for is grace.
Yes.
And grace only comes when they trust. And so I will always respect a healthy dose of skepticism, because the system has been broken. It has broken other people. Those are realities. But as you said, I just wish people would be like, I'm about to get really angry at this one thing, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes to explain to me why I shouldn't be angry. Go. I respect that. And I'm going to take that 5 minutes and do everything I can. And at the end of that, if they're still upset, they've earned it. I respect it, and let's figure it out. But most of the times, by the time that's over with, they're like, I had no idea, or that makes sense, or that is a big elephant to eat in one bite. So I love that.
There's just so many nuances to how people come into the system, and in what way, like the process through which people come into the system, their exit ramps, the way that we can or can't create exit ramps for people. And it's I know it feels bad to say, but that's just how the system is.
Yeah.
And I don't always want us to be complacent and go, well, that's just the way the system is. We just, you have to go talk to Topeka about that.
And they don't want to, I don't want people to just accept that answer either. It's like our hands are tied. We've done all we can do. Again, that's okay. Well, then now where do we go with this? And that, whether it be Topeka, or if it goes over my head, or it goes back to the voters, I mean, any number of things. But I think that's a great thing to ask for.
Hopefully I did not just get myself run out of words. But
I hope you say something way dumber than that.
I just think that that's really, and I don't think people know that unless they're like us and have spent so much time enmeshed in this and going, what? Because there's a lot of times too that I think we think, but this is so simple. Why can't we just do this?
Yeah.
And then we go, oh, dang it. That's why it's not going to work.
Right. Yeah. So. Well, and when it is your 24/7 waking moment, what you're doing all the time, we lose sight of a lot of things because we're just so deeply involved in them. So I totally get that. What's the thing right now for CJCC, and what's kind of on the horizon?
So we just, so this is kind of we've spent the last 18, 20 months kind of in a period of evaluating what changes, where are we at? Where do we want to go? How do we get there? Yeah. And through a lot of different things. So kind of starting with that assessment that the Justice Management Institute did with all of you. against the national standards, and then we spent last year revising the bylaws and kind of our governance structure. And all of that kind of has culminated with the strategic plan. So in February, you all just adopted a 3-year strategic plan at your February meeting. And so that will go through that is set to go through December of 2027. We are taking that to the Board of County Commissioners the first part of April for just to present it to them. We have a new leadership structure. So we're kind of bringing the bylaws to life through, we have a new executive committee. I won't say new, like we have an executive committee, right? Because that whole structure is new, who will be overseeing kind of the implementation of the strategic plan. So the 2 priorities that you all are getting started on right now are the first one focusing on system-wide data, which is gonna be a lot.
It is. We're data-rich, interpretation poor.
Once we start kind of getting into that space, and particularly as we think about, having a new district attorney who's getting used to a lot of the information that's available to him. So kind of catching his office up to what information they have, and so data across the system. We're starting on that. And then the communication strategy. So the other part of the standards that we just didn't really have or a lot. And I don't know that we've ever really talked or thought about this is a strategic communications plan that really outlines, probably all of you as agencies have kind of this is how you communicate. This is what you do. These are the core messaging principles for y'all. And we as a CJCC, even though we're not a body of authority, it's still really important that as a body, you all kind of agree about because we're all if we're talking about the CJCC, we're communicating on lots of people's behalf, right?
That's for sure.
So, so we're starting to pull together. I think we're meeting in a couple of weeks. That work group is going to come together, of PIOs to start working on developing a strategic communications plan for you all. So I'm going to do a shameless plug.
Oh,
okay.
Great.
So I worked with the county IT for a lot last week and the first part of this week, to kind of revamp the CJCC website to incorporate and kind of show off a little bit more of the changes that you all made.
Sure.
So the website is new, or there's new content and new layout of things. So I'm going to probably get it, or I should have written this down in my notes, but dgcoks.gov and then the /CJCC. So we have the new bylaws up there, members, and then we did a section on the strategic plan. And so the 4 priority areas that are laid out there. There's a document or a link that outlines the process that you all went through to get to those 4 priority areas. And then we also have the entire strategic plan, which is 97 pages.
I was going to say, that's a lot.
Is also linked there. So there's a lot of information. And I think over time, as we start to figure out kind of what is it that we're reporting out to you all, as members of the CJCC, to the public, back to the county commission, as we start to have outcomes and figure out what is the reporting, the way that we're going to do that will be adapting that section of the website. But there's a lot of new information there, and we're just getting really started in that's going to be very meaty. Both of those two, I think both of those 2 priorities are pretty hefty, because communications is probably a lot. Just like there's more to the criminal justice system, then there's probably a lot more to communications than what I know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's one thing to put the information out. That's the other thing to get them to hear it and hear it the way you want it to hear it. So I think that pretty well rounds it out for that part of it. I'm gonna go with the fun questions now.
Okay, these are the ones that you sent me.
I'm a little disappointed if I sent those to you, because now you've had time to think about it. But George's too good to me. keep you in the loop. So it's a simple question.
Okay.
What was your first concert?
Okay.
What was your most recent? And what was your favorite?
Most recent. Oh, gosh.
And those can all be the same thing. But
okay, so my first concert
mm-hmm.
Was Brian White, who probably nobody outside of Texas knows.
Yeah, no, that doesn't sound familiar. I went to school with a kid named Brian White.
No, and I can't even now remember like songs
What
that he
he's
sang. I'm
famous
going to
for.
be really disappointed like when I go back and I had cassette tapes.
Yeah, and all
like,
7
this was
listeners
like
are
a
now
while ago.
Spotifying him.
Yes, I'm gonna be doing the same thing when I leave here. But it was at Billy Bob's, Texas.
Where is that in Texas?
It's in Fort Worth.
Okay.
It's in the Stockyards,
I've heard of
which
Billy
is
Bob's.
the north side of Fort Worth.
Okay.
If you're ever in Fort Worth, you have to go to Billy Bob's. It's just a Fort Worth institution.
After Buc-ee's.
I mean, Buc-ee's came later. Billy Bob's was first.
Yeah.
But Billy Bob's, Texas, it's just this little.
Yeah.
It's your traditional
Sure.
Texas honky tonk.
Uh-huh.
So
yeah.
I saw Brian White there.
Did it have an acre of dance floor?
Yes.
Like Gillies?
Yes. It's a yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So, but you have to go check it out, and you should just check out the Stockyards too in
Sure.
general. That is off topic of the question.
Well,
Most
my funny Gillies story is I went there one afternoon while I was in training in Dallas, and I got on the bull, and this dude ran the bull, and I rode it for 8 seconds. And then I heard myself yell the dumbest thing I've ever said in my life.
God.
I yelled, "Is that all you've got?" And I'm looking at him. He's got a cowboy hat. This guy's, and he does that with his I mean, 1.2 seconds later, I had a dislocated elbow, and I was piled up in the corner on a bunch of mats. So yeah, he
you
was
could
being
do
nice
that
to me.
also at Billy Bob's.
Oh,
'Cause there is a
fantastic.
mechanical bull there.
Okay, well, I'm too old. I got compromised hips now. I can't be doing that.
Most recent. What were the other ones?
Most recent and favorite.
And favorite. Okay. So my most recent was before. So the little town that I lived in, North Carolina, Kannapolis. Their Parks and Rec.
That's where Dale Earnhardt's from.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh huh.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that?
Because it's in here.
Okay.
If I remember one more thing, I'm going to forget my anniversary date.
Kannapolis is known for Dale Earnhardt and Cannon Mills, Cannon Towels.
Sure.
But the Parks and Rec did every summer. They had this like concert series, and so people like the Commodores.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, like
yeah.
it wasn't like recent people.
Dropped
who were,
a bomb on me.
It wasn't like
Absolutely.
recent people who were still big touring on the big stage. But
They're affordable.
Uncle Cracker
Oh yeah,
was the last one.
for sure. Okay, all right.
That was my most recent one.
Yeah. All right. Favorite.
Favorite. Garth Brooks puts on a good show.
I've heard that. My
that
wife's
is
seen him a
just
couple
the
times.
Best
Yep.
show.
Yep.
He is such a good entertainer.
Yeah.
I think I would have to say.
Dude can fill up stadiums like 3 nights in a row.
Yeah.
So
Like I.
pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. How long did you see him, and where?
Probably I think it was the Fort Worth Convention Center.
Yeah.
In the last. It was like in. This might make me feel old.
You want to know why you feel old?
Because I am.
Yeah, that's it.
It was like 1996.
Oh my gosh, that
Was
was a
the
long time
last?
ago.
Yeah.
I was cool back in 1996. That's how long ago it was. Okay.
I was too.
Yeah.
I had friends.
It's hard to believe.
I had a social life.
Exactly.
But he's a
Yeah.
good one. You should go see.
Okay.
him.
Well.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
20.
Yeah. Yeah. The 20 years ago.
Was that 30 years?
Yes, it was.
Oh God.
Yep. I just had my 30th,
30 years ago. He
my
was
30th
really
high
good.
school reunion. So yeah, we're officially old.
Oh, I have my 25th.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I think that's all I have for us today, unless you have any questions for me. Nope.
No.
So thank you again for joining us.
Yes, of
Thanks.
course.
Like I said, the 9 people who listen to this are just going to be impressed out of their pants because of the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you, everything you do for me and my agency specifically. But other than that, thanks a lot, and we look forward to many future years of trying to navigate this bumpy road full of potholes, trapdoors, and asterisks. So, yep. All right. Thank you, Katie.